Today we are making Italian buttercream, aka Italian meringue buttercream. So let's get started. To make the buttercream, you will need those 4 ingredients. So first, as a preparation, leave your butter at room temperature ahead to make it soft. But when I forget to take it out from a fridge ahead, this is what I do. I use microwave and heat for 10 seconds, and the bottom is heated more than the top. That is why after 10 seconds, flip and continue repeating the process until it gets soft enough. And toward the end, I add less than 10 seconds, like 3 to 5 seconds, to really make sure that the butter is not melting. It's okay to stop a little bit before the ideal because you still have like 30 minutes before you actually use it. And use very clean tools with no dirt, oil, and liquids. With them, the syrup might get crystallized, and they also prevent egg whites from whipping up really well. And for the same reason, when you separate egg yolk and egg white, make sure that yolks are not mixed in the egg white because yolks contains oil, natural oil, and it does the same thing. Now to make Italian meringue, add all the sugar in the pot and add water all over. Shake the pot to make sure that the sugar is completely wet. It's important so that the sugar is not getting crystallized later. And if you see any sugar attached to the side, wash it off with a brush, or you can actually use a lid to do the same thing. I'm going to show you how I do that in a second. I usually start from egg white. I start whipping egg white first and then start heating the pot at medium heat. And at the beginning, don't touch at all. Just leave it like that because if you touch a lot, if you mix a lot, the sugar might get crystallized. And to wash off the side, you can just put the lid on. Water is falling from the side, so it has the same effect as applying water with the brush. Do one of that at least one time while you are heating. And once you see that the water is boiling crazy and it started getting thickened a little bit, start checking the temperature. So 118 to 119, which is 244 to 246 Fahrenheit, is the temperature zone that I highly recommend for Italian meringue buttercream. Okay, so let's pay attention here. 115, 116, 117. 118 right now. All right, so now the syrup is ready. And as soon as it's ready, you want the meringue to get whipped up very fluffy. So the timings are so important. So pay attention to both of them. When the meringue is not fluffy enough at this point, your Italian meringue would not be so stiff. Add the syrup while it's still very hot because as it cools down, it starts getting thickened and getting stick to the pot. Add slowly and let the syrup slide down from the bowl. That way it gets picked up by a whisk more easily. If you add syrup on top of a whisk, for example, it could scatter to the side of the bowl, or if you add a lot of it at once, it can stick to the bottom of your bowl. Okay, so at the beginning, continue whipping at high speed to make very fluffy Italian meringue. And at this point, the bowl is very hot. And when it cools down to warm, turn down the speed a little bit like this. And when it feels gently warm, I turn it down again like this. And when it almost doesn't feel anything or slightly warm, you can stop. If you continue whipping after it's cooled down, it'll slowly lose the volume. All right, now to finish, add butter. By now, this butter is nice and soft like this. It's perfect. And don't forget to scrape off excess butter attached to the papers. You can add all at once and start whipping. Add butter right away and start mixing while the condition of the meringue is the best. Also, it's so important that the meringue is not warm so that the butter is not going to melt. And how much you whip is up to you. If you want a very fluffy, airy buttercream, whip a lot here. I often whip for about a few minutes. Clean up the bowl and whisk and everywhere at least a few times to make even buttercream. And it is done. Just like any other buttercream gets hard in the fridge once it's chilled. So if you want to enjoy the fluffy texture, pipe right after you serve or leave at room temperature for some time. To check the temperature of the syrup without a thermometer, use ice water. Today I added the big amount, but when you make Italian meringue, don't add too much so that you're not going to lose too much syrup. And wait until it cools down completely and take it out and squish and check the consistency. Kind of firm but flexible like this, like a clay. Ooh, cold. And to color this buttercream, I recommend gel or paste coloring so that the consistency stays nice and thick. You can still use a liquid coloring, but it's my favorite. And you can also make amazing chocolate buttercream using this Italian buttercream. I'm showing 2 ways to make chocolate buttercream with cocoa powder and melted chocolate in this video, so if you're interested, please check that out.
Yummy.
Store in an airtight container for up to 5 days in the fridge, maybe 7 days, but I personally would not recommend that since it contains eggs, or up to a few months in the freezer. When you store in the freezer, simply move it to a fridge, and before you use it, take it out from a fridge ahead to make it soft, which usually takes about 4 to 5 hours depending on the room temperature and the temperature of the fridge. You do not need to re-whip it, just like my French buttercream or Swiss buttercream recipe. You can use it right away. So when your finished buttercream is loose and it's not very stiff, there are 2 reasons I can think of. One is the temperature of the syrup to make the meringue. When the temperature is lower than it should be, your meringue is going to be loose, which results in more loose buttercream. And another biggest cause is butter. If your butter was super soft or partially melted, of course it results in a loose buttercream. And also when you don't wait enough and add the butter to the warm meringue, your butter melts. So always check the temperature of your meringue. And for this, I can also think of 2 reasons. If the temperature of the syrup was way higher than it should be, it cannot blend in the egg white because it's too thick and it just get hardens quickly. It'll leave like tiny pieces of sugar in your meringue. And also it could be because your butter was too cold and it didn't blend in the meringue really well. The tiny pieces of butter remained. use them when the consistencies and the temperatures are about the same. So I think I covered most of the questions and the troubles. If you have any other questions, let me know and I'll try to answer as many as possible. Come here. So, what do we say? Enjoy pastry ribbon and I'll see you next week. Bye bye!